Now, when I tell you what are the areas that were most useful for me and what Japanese I actually use, you have to take all that into consideration. I'm not all people in Japan. The survival skills that I needed will be different than someone else's. Hello, and welcome to this stream. My name is Mar, and I founded an animation studio in Japan. We usually do commission work, mostly heartwarming stories, adventure, fantasy, romance when we can. So, the topic for today is Japanese to survive and thrive in Japan, what Mar really uses. Now, we will not talk about it will not be a Japanese lesson per se, but I will talk about what's the level I came to Japan with, what other things I learned, like what is the day-to-day Japanese I actually use. I use it for groceries, I use it to go to the gym, things like that. So I came to Japan to study the language. That meant that I would study Japanese for like 3-4 hours every morning, like on weekdays. And I came with already the N3. It's a level of the Japanese language proficiency test. It's like an official Japanese language test, as you can guess. So I had a very, very, very basic knowledge when I came, especially oral speaking, not as much in writing or grammar. I was living with two Japanese people, and they spoke Japanese and some Spanish. Now, these people is someone that I knew from Spain. They live in around my same area, and I call they're my grandparents. They're basically my grandparents, not related by blood, but all the time we spent together and all the help we've done to each other. Like it's not just me saying, "Oh, they're my grandparents." Like even my family asks me about them and knows them, and they also know my family. Like they just integrated. I was studying Japanese, but at home I had some help in somewhat Spanish for some months during the year. So sometimes I was living alone, sometimes I was living with them. At the beginning, I was with them. So even if I didn't know the language, it wasn't like completely on my own. Uh, and that was really, really helpful. Then the next couple of years after that, I went to vocational school and studied animation in a vocational school that was like all spoke like all in Japanese. I worked full time, like another 2 years, I think. I worked for full time at Go Nihon, and I was doing mostly marketing, but the environment was in English. That was in Japanese, but mostly all communications were in English, some even in Spanish. I married a Japanese man, sorry, plural in English. Great. And he speaks English as well, not Spanish. Well, it's something. So that's a bit of like my context. And then after working for 2 years, those 2 years I getting married, I started my own business in Japan. Like basically, I went part time in that same job while I was growing my own studio here in Japan. The thing is, most of the studio speak in English. So, disclaimer, there's people around me who has helped me. Like it's not just how I survive in Japanese, but there's also people who help me survive, which is people who is bilingual or multilingual. There's translating services like applications and things like that. There's books, there's everything. So much patience with me, so much patience. And there's been also lots of miscommunication. Actually, I may today reply to your questions or explain things that I believe are true, but actually they're not because they come from some miscommunication in the past or something I understood incorrectly. So bear with me with that. And I think my Japanese was the best was when I was in vocational school because I just passed the N2 level. I was surrounded all day with like lots of Japanese. I was living alone most of the time. I can do groceries. I can like do things like some paperwork. I can travel around Japan. I can talk with people to a degree about like their feelings, their situation. I can work in Japanese more or less. But when I went to animation school, what happened is I forgot some of these areas that I wasn't using, and I learned more about the animation studio industry words. So a lot of words I know are actually very related to that industry, which is great. It's like in any industry, there's words that out of context, you would think they mean something, but in the industry mean something else. So they're completely just for that industry and otherwise I don't know how many times do you use the word like compositing or 3D computer animation. Like these are words like that are in there. Like how do you say drawing, pencil, this machine? How do you call the holes in the animation sheet? How do you call an animation sheet? Character design, the arm, the something, like so many words, like all the hardware, the software, like the software and everything was in Japanese as well. Actually, I remember finding a PDF with the translation of all the Photoshop words with English to Japanese and checking that sometimes, but many times because I had it in my home, I had the same software, I think in Spanish or English, and then at school I had the had it in Japanese, like the software in front of me. Just by remembering where things were, more or less, I could guess it. And many times because, like for example, softwares are made. Many softwares are from Western cultures and made in English. Like lots of it is written in a way that's like Japanized phonetics for an English word. For example, just Photoshop name, it would be Photoshop. So if you can read phonetically, Photoshop is like, oh, it's Photoshop, it's the program. Some are not very easy to understand though, even with that phonetical thing. But basically, you see the cover like this. This is the After Effects for Animation book. And obviously, people who could understand the book would work on it. But I was just guessing things around, checking with the teacher is explaining, and like there's tons and tons of books regarding animation in Japan, step by step. Like for example, this book is very old now, so we were given books, but most of the classes were like lots of oral, like, okay, let's practice this. Today we have, for example, if it was the class for After Effects and compositing and putting all the drawings and the background together and make them move in an actual video. Like the teacher will come with a folder, they gave us, okay, so you have this background, you have this characters animation, and today all together, step by step, we'll put them there, we'll make a fire effect and smoke and things like that. So it was a very like practicing job that either the teacher was telling you what to do step by step or you were given like instructions for a particular task. However, there was one book, this one. This is the older version, by the way. There's a newer one that I think is blue. But this one is very good because it's a glossary basically. So it's like word by word and what it means. And this book, I really made the effort to read or as much as I can get. So, for example, they would say, this is words in alphabet. So I always go to this one. So something very good about this book is that they give you the word and then they give you how to pronounce it. That helps so much to then like type it and look for things. So, but then there's things like next one here, as you can see, is there book, right? So book, it's not like a book. A book is like a layer, most likely background in front of the characters. So, for example, if you see this image, right, you have a layer on top of the character, which is these leaves, and you have the character, then you have the actual background. So, in this case, these leaves, it's difficult because I'm moving in the other side. Look at the camera. So, these leaves basically are the book because they're on top of the character, right? That's called book in English words. Why? I still don't know. Now, when I decided to make my own studio, we had a set of new issues. One is that because the studio, the clients and the teammates are in, I speak with them mostly in English, in some cases even in Spanish. Was forgetting the language, but I had to learn new assets, areas of paperwork, taxes. I got books on that too. Can I show you the books? Give me a moment on how to open your business, how to be a freelancer, like all the paperwork. And I would like take a picture, put it into like I think Google Translate to translate a bit, like see if I got the basics and research online. Does this make sense? Lots of notes and post-its, and I met one of another key persons in my life, which is an accountant helper, if that makes sense. So basically, there's like these organizations that they help you fill in the form tax papers and you pay like a quadrimestral fee and they help you like fill in this form. Now, all these services in Japanese, but I went there and this one person had the patience to help me translate like lots of parts of the document because it uses software. And in the software, you can modify the titles of and the like the rows and the types of expenses, for example. So we could have the word in Japanese and then a bit of English. So I remember what that was. And I went to that person and I asked them, okay, so I did this step, what's the next step? So again, people had so much patience, but I also had to do a lot of extra work to like get some resources, some books, like same like another one here about more taxes and company making and so on. There's so much resources in Japan. In Japanese, my Japanese is very neutral to informal. And I would talk informal even to elders, teachers, people I would interview, uh, just like people with who you should probably speak formal. I would tell them in advance, hey, I don't mean to be disrespectful. If I switch, I don't notice I'm switching to informal. Please, it's not personal. It's not intended. And most people, if you go, especially if you're informal and your face is foreigner, usually they don't take it badly in general. But if you're especially like at some point at the beginning of the conversation or meeting the person, you tell them this like, I'm really bad at informal speaking. I'm really bad at formal speaking. If you notice I'm doing something, saying something oddly or like I'm being informal, please take into account I'm not trying to be disrespectful in person or mean harm. So I use Japanese especially for groceries. So I'm really good at reading ingredients of food and asking for things related to that and also eating out. I had that phase where I was really trying to eat vegetarian in Japan for reasons we can get into in maybe another video. That's not the case anymore, although I eat much more plant-based foods right now than before. But I also had to discover like a set of vocabulary to do that. Like how do I call all these ingredients? How do I speak people that eat this and I don't eat that? Things like that. Family is a big thing. So as I mentioned, my husband is Japanese. Now in his family they don't speak English or Spanish. Well, they speak a bit of it. They speak a bit of it. So my Japanese is better than their English or Spanish, basically. So I try to accommodate in that. And I must say that after spending 2 or 3 days with them, I get very exhausted in my brain because it's a lot of Japanese at once. But we can communicate well enough, and they have so much patience with me, like explaining me things, repeating, and like even like I'm just so just happy. Frequently asked question, what language do I use with my husband? And it's like I don't even know. We speak a lot in Japanese when we're speaking, like out loud, but on texting or messaging, like online, we use more English. But then when we're speaking, we switch from one thing to the other. Like, for example, I'm speaking Japanese, and at some point, I want to say something that I know I can get better in English, and then I switch to English. And then maybe he will reply to me in English, and then find that point again for him and go to Japanese. Things like that. Also, depending on the subject, if we speak about things about Japan, maybe we speak in Japanese. Things about abroad that require lots of English words, we end up switching to English. I don't even know. It's such a mess. After years living here, sometimes just visually, you already know what it is about, and that happens in any language, I'm guessing. It also has lots of images and colors and so on, so even if you don't understand one part of it, from the other, you more or less get the context. Like you start getting used to the format of the things, and then it's like, okay, this feels like just from this, the type of paper feels like something that's sent to everyone, but then there's like this big red thing, like this information I really need, things like that. This is a very good example, actually, but there's some that are terrible. Oh, Japanese newspaper. Yeah, I cannot read the Japanese newspaper. Like, I can get the feeling of, okay, sometimes I can get like the feeling, okay, so this is about politics and talking about this person, but I cannot like read the actual article, for example. And again, you don't need to be an expert in each of these areas to survive, but at least in my case, to live my life here, I need some degree of it because I cannot just rely on everyone translating everything for me, and also the apps are not completely reliable. And again, in all of these areas, I make a lot of mistakes. We'll get into some funny mistakes later, hopefully, but there's a lot of mistakes. Oh, all right. Well, this topic was longer than I expected, but I want to get to one more thing. What's the thing I'm saying all the time in Japanese is the FAQ. Everyone will have their FAQ that you will get asked plenty of times. Where are you from? Why did you come to Japan? What are you doing now? So you have to learn how to speak about your country. The question, do you also have this in your country? Like, do you like this food? Like, do you like paella? Do you know how to dance flamenco? Do you know how to play the guitar? Like, why did you come? We could talk about the terms of micro-racism here. If you're not familiar with micro-racism, please look about it because it's something that we all do, usually from a place of not knowing better. But that's something I get in, like, I suffer in a daily basis, almost like micro racisms. Telling that, for example, no, I'm not American, or wait, well, English is not my native language either, so don't expect me to know all the things about all the words. Also, yes, I am I grew up in Spain in the Barcelona area, but I haven't lived them in 10 years. Maybe I don't know the answer to your question. So thank you very much for watching this video. We went into a Q&A, but actually this part will be cut and it's put somewhere else online, most likely for our patrons to appreciate their support. And if you have any more questions or want to see more videos like this, just maybe leave a comment, something like that. And again, thanks for being here. Bye bye.